Hello. I'm just thought I'd test and see if you can hear me okay, and just making sure that the audio video is all good. Let me know in the chats if you can see me. I can see a comment from Tarina Gray. Nice to see you today. We've also got Margaret and quite a few people on Facebook. Margaret Adminson from Michigan. Awa. We've got Yvette as well. We've got Ken Lim. I think, yeah, I hadn't heard of you. Oh, sorry, things just reset. But let me know in the comments if you can see and hear me. Okay, just been having some technical issues, but looks to be okay now. Yeah, Ken, I think I wonder if it was you that I was emailing recently. Ken from Singapore. Richard, how you doing, Richard? Good to see you again this week from Byron Bay. Beautiful beach weather up here. That's awesome, Richard. I used to ride a motorbike back in Perth. I moved over to Melbourne about quite a while now, nearly 7 years ago, and I ended up buying a new one recently. So it'd be nice to do some riding this weekend. So yeah, we've got. I'm just sort of scrolling through the comments. Teresa, Shannon from New Orleans. Yeah, if you're in the chats, you're just watching along, leave a message. Let me know whereabouts you're from and just introduce yourself. And also, if you've got some, just some general comments on what you'd like me to go through today, because I thought today I wanted to start off not with the actual painting itself, but with some techniques, some wet on wet techniques to show you how to push back certain features, make certain things like mountains look a little bit softer, and create these sort of wet and wet effects. I think that's really important when we're dealing with atmospheric landscapes, which is the topic of today's workshop. So there's two types of perspective. Obviously, there's a normal perspective where you're making objects appear smaller as they go back, creates a bit of depth. But you've got atmospheric perspective where objects in the back appear to be less detailed, even blurry, slightly bluish, and that sort of creates that feeling of depth. So when you've got trees in the front that are a little bit sharper, more detailed, and it's decreasing complexity. So I'll show you how to kind of convey that using a bunch of watercolor techniques. And I tend to actually do that with wet and wet effects, pushing things like shrubs and trees and things like that in the back, further back. And then in the front, I'll use sharper techniques and also some darker colors. So anyhow, I will just show you some of my work, and I'm not a super realistic painter. Like I paint very loosely. Okay, so let me see that. Okay, so I'm assuming the audio is all good, everyone. People seem to be able to hear me. Okay, and Ken says, Darren just got to know you a few days ago from the publicity. Cool. I thought I thought you might have got an email from me or something like that. Okay, Teresa. Let me just have a look. People were asking about materials. So yeah, I'll talk about materials in just a moment. But yeah, basically I'm using 100% cotton watercolor 100% cotton watercolor paper. So that's the best paper to use. If you don't have that paper, if you've got cellulose paper or other types of watercolor paper, completely fine as well. I just find that if you're using 100% cotton paper, that you get much softer washes, so you can execute these sort of wet and wet effects very easily. And you can also layer over the top without rubbing off the previous layers. So it's just a lot more durable, get a better result. If you can get this stuff where you are, sometimes I actually buy my watercolor paper in very, 56 by 76 centimeter sheets, and then I just tear it and create smaller sheets of paper. So yeah, as you can see, these are just a few paintings that I've done recently. They're about an A5, slightly larger than A5, I think 1/8 sheet. Okay, so they're definitely not, they're definitely not huge sort of sheets of paper. And I find this is a lot easier when you're starting out, you're a beginner as well. You don't want to have huge sort of sheets of paper because normally that would just take longer for you to get into the scene, start painting, and people get quite intimidated as well when you have, large sheets of paper. So if you start off with smaller sheets like this, yeah, you can quite easily get a painting finished in an hour or two maybe. So yeah, so these are a few, and actually this one reminds me a little bit of the scene we'll be doing today. Okay, but yeah, we'll add in a few more details here and there, and yeah, some more here. Kind of natural landscapes, I think, is one of the best subjects to tackle as a beginner because you don't need that really accurate sense of, if you're doing a building or some kind of man-made building, you have to kind of make it look like that building. Lots of sharp edges, lots of intricacies there. Not to say that there's not that kind of thing with trees and stuff, but you have leeway. So branches go off in different directions. If you, for example, you don't follow the reference exactly and you make that branch go up like that, still going to look fine. So that's why I recommend those type of scenes for beginners. Some pen and wash, line and wash scenes there. Quite like this one. Took me a while to draw. Another kind of loose landscape, okay, and this sort of atmospheric feeling here in the background as well. Softer, softer branches and trees and stuff like that. Here's one that I quite like as well. Okay, so we're going to be using a little bit of this technique, and yeah, I'll actually show you all how to use this technique, this wet and wet technique, to push back features, make sort of this blurry looking effect here in the background, blend it with some of these sharper effects as well. Okay, so this workshop is completely free, and people often ask me how much is it, this kind of thing. So basically, like at the end of the workshop, I talk a bit about a paid class that a paid program that I run. You don't have to buy it. It's just yeah, it's a good way to sort of end the show. And sometimes I find that even if a few people are interested, it all works out for me. So here are some more. This is like a quick line and wash one that I did with the student quite a while back. I actually finished that one off at home. Here's a few more here. So yeah, hope this gives you a bit of an indication of the type of my style of painting. And once you get the hang of it, once you get the process down of how to paint this way, it becomes very easy and very efficient. Painting becomes fun. It's not really like a labored process where you're sitting there for hours and hours trying to work on something. You can often finish these paintings in one sitting when you use wet and wet techniques. So see these mountains in the background, these trees here, most of the rocks, the water and the sand and the sky, that was all painted in just one wash. Okay, if you can do all that in one wash, can you imagine how much time you actually save, and you get this beautiful soft look as well. So that's probably a good example of what we're going to try to achieve today. Okay, I'm just trying to see if I've got any other paintings. I've got a whole bunch of these on the side here. So yeah, just thought I'd go through a few of these. If you have questions, by the way, let me know in the chats. Okay, so yeah, what was I going on about again? Yeah, so materials. So I'm using medium textured watercolor paper. So yeah, medium textured or cold press watercolor paper, that tends to work best in terms of these landscapes. Yeah, you're just going to be able to get these blended effects. If you're using smooth hot press watercolor paper, that's just really smooth. Yeah, you find that the paper dries quickly, and you don't get as much sort of blending and these nice gradations. In terms of brushes, let me just show you what I'm using. So I've got a bunch of these watercolor mop brushes. These are essential for beginners or basically anyone who's painting watercolor. You can see they have like a larger belly so they can hold a lot of paint. Tips smaller, so the tip allows you to cut around shapes as well to get that precision. And I've got 3 different sizes depending on what type of the size of the paper you're using. So for example, this paper is pretty small. It's like an A5 sheet, okay, 1/8 sheet, okay, and yeah, like for that, I may use this for the sky, maybe a little bit of the sand, maybe the sky, that's it. The rest of it, I can use this other smaller mop brush. So I try to use the largest brush I can. It makes things easier and stops you from dabbling around an area too much, making a mess. So I aim to use fewer brush strokes where possible. So a couple of brushes I also use for detailing are, here, let me just grab it, mop brush. Actually got quite a few here on the side, but I never need all of these. I don't know why I've got all 15 or something brushes down there. I don't want to confuse anyone. So these are synthetic brushes, synthetic round brush, synthetic flat brush. Okay. This is for detailing things like the edges of the rocks, its details of the figures, things like that. I also use a little pocket knife. Sounds mad, but I use that to scratch off little sections at the back there to create these like tree effects. Just revealing the white of the paper in some areas. Just creates a little bit of texture. It's a nice little technique without having to go into gouache. So speaking of which, I do have a little tube of white gouache as well, which we will use at the end to maybe bring back some highlights. But let me show you my palette. Now, I haven't really cleaned this at all. I have cleaned the right-hand side though, or the one that's closest to me anyway, because so that you can see kind of what colors I'm using. But yeah, a lot of people ask about colors and what is the what you need for colors. Now this is too much. Okay, I've got all this, I've got all these colors, but there are certain ones that I barely use. Okay, for this class, as long as you have yourself a yellow. So I've got a few yellows here. I've got a yellow ochre. I find that's the best all-round kind of yellow. It's not too vibrant. It's not too kind of saturated. It's more of like an earthen yellow. If you do have another yellow like a, what am I trying to say? Hansa yellow, which is a very, very bright yellow. That's fine as well. I try to dull it down. I'll mix the Hansa yellow with a bit of titanium white or buff titanium to dull it down a little bit, because there is a, you can see in the ground here as well of the reference photo that it's kind of like a golden yellow. Okay, so you've got kind of like a golden yellow hues, and then you also in the background it's more of like I'd say like a really light yellow ochre kind of color. So I have this quinacridone gold here as well, a little bit of quinacridone gold, which is good to put in there as well. But really, if you just have one yellow, completely fine. Bit of red. Here I've got pyrrole red. You can use permanent red. Some people use alizarin crimson. Okay, got a bit of ultramarine blue here as well. Ultramarine blue, you can paint skies, just dilute it with water. You can mix it with red and create really nice kind of purplish shadows. Okay, I do have cerulean blue, which I use for the sky, but it's not necessary. I like cerulean blue for the sky. It just has a more kind of muted and sky-like color. But yeah, ultramarine's completely fine. These ones here are not necessary. I've got a couple of brown or earthen tones. So I've got burnt sienna, and I've also got burnt umber. So that's kind of like a dark brown and a light brown. Okay, if you've just got a dark brown, that's fine. Even if you don't have a dark brown for this class, it's really not a big deal. Okay, the rest of these colors here are basically just purples and grays. And you can mix these from all of your other colors. So things like your red and your blue, mix them together, you can get lots of nice purples. If you want to mix a gray, which is really just a dark color, I just mix my blue, red, and yellow together, and you can get yourself quite a nice dark value. So all these colors are really not necessary. You only need a few of them. So people often ask, do I need 20 different colors? How many colors do I need? Is it better to buy just a few good artist grade colors? Yes, like that's my answer. Always get the best quality stuff that you can, and it doesn't have to be super expensive as well. Even if you have 3 artist grade colors, they'll probably cost you as much as a whole set of student grade colors. You might get 20 of them, and you only use about 5 of them anyway. So they definitely go a long way. They're more concentrated. So yeah, I think that's about it in terms of materials. Just trying to think. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm sure I've missed something out. There's a bit of green as well that I have here. It's called undersea green. Again, convenience color. You can mix your greens from blue and yellow. So yeah, if you want a darker green, mix more blue to yellow. If you want a lighter green, mix more yellow into your blue. So yeah, I just have that there so I don't have to continually mix it up. But that's what I'm saying. In terms of your colors, you only really need a few of them. You can mix so many colors just from your primaries. Oh, let me catch a breath. Let's have a look over in the comments. Margaret, good to see you. We've got Kok Wai Fung, Leslie here. We've got June. We've got Pamela. How you doing, Pamela? One of my long-term students. Good to see you again. And good. Okay, guys. So I will get started now. I don't really see any questions. But yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments. I will get back to you. I'm just sort of scrolling through the comments, and every now and then when I see a question, I will get back to you. Nerad is asking, saying missing tape. So yeah, tape is good as well. So you'll notice here, this is where we're going to be painting, or what I'm going to be painting on. I'm using masking tape on the side. This will help the paper to stay completely flat. Okay, it's difficult to use wet and wet techniques when your paper is buckling and moving around all the place. So yeah, masking tape, you can get this at your local hardware supply store. It costs a couple of dollars. You can get like a roll or two for that. But yeah, that's one thing. But yeah, for sort of these little exercises that I'm going to run now, if you have a bit of scrap paper, just pull out a bit of scrap paper, and I'm going to just show you a little exercise, and we'll do this quickly, and then I'll also do like a little sketch of the scene today, just to get warmed up. Okay, sometimes when you haven't painted, even for like a week or two, it really pays off to do these little sketches. So I'm going to put in these 4 boxes here, okay? These 4 little boxes. All right, just a bit of scrap paper. You don't need anything special for this. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is grab a brush, a mop brush like this. Okay. Ken's asking what's neutral tint. Neutral tint is a pre-mixed gray. So it's basically a convenience gray, and you can mix that by mixing your 3 primary colors together: red, blue, and yellow. So you don't need to buy it. I have it because it's just easier, so I don't have to mix it up all the time. Hope that answered your question. Vanessa's asking, what about tubes of watercolors? Yeah, tubes are my preferred, way of buying watercolors, because that allows me to sort of squeeze it out into the palette when I'm finished. You can sort of top up your palette all the time. I find you just get more out of the tube. I find it's better value. And if I want to make a tiny little set that I can bring out with me while I'm outside doing a bit of plein air painting, easy. You can just squeeze it out and let it dry, and then it becomes the dried form watercolor. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm gonna do let's start with this exercise. Now I've got the 4 squares here, and this is really just to get used to the idea of painting wet into wet. So I'm putting a bit of water into these 4 sections here. For some reason my water's a little bit murky. Doesn't matter, you know. There we go. So just wetting the paper like this. All right. And we're going to do an experiment. Okay. And this is one of the best ways to understand how wet and wet watercolors work. Okay. So for example, I may be thinking of putting in some mountains. Okay. Let's put in some distant mountains or something like that. So I'm going to pick up maybe a bit of blue, a little bit of ultramarine blue. Let me shift this. Oh, you can sort of see my palette here on the side. That's cool. Okay, so a little bit of ultramarine blue here, right? And when you're painting wet into wet as well, what makes sense? So obviously, if you want to make a darker shape and put a bit of brown in there as well, if you want to make a bit of a darker shape, you want to use a thicker paint. Okay, so this paper is completely wet, and can you see what's happening? The paint is just spreading all over the place. Okay, it's creating these abstract sort of oops, move that over, shouldn't come over there, But yeah, not much control at all. So if you're painting things like cloud, that kind of thing, softer sort of shapes, and you don't mind it being furry and moving all over the place, this is what you want, okay? A lot of beginners do this, and they're trying to paint maybe, I don't know, something a little bit more detailed, like a tree trunk or something, and they find the paint just spreads all over the place. So there's a time to do that, and you're going to have to wait till a little bit later, okay? So, but as you can see, that's what happens. It sort of spreads out. So this is a really quite a magical period that I actually use to paint a lot of things like grass, some distant trees and mountains, okay? Everything looks quite abstract. Play around with it a little bit. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, all you're doing is just seeing how the paint reacts on paper, okay? Getting used to it. And a lot of people don't practice their techniques enough before they actually start painting. And by the time they start painting and doing things, you haven't had the practice. So paper's starting to dry off a little bit, and the thicker the paint you use, the less it spreads. See? Okay. So let's try it over here, this second part, and I'm hoping the second part has dried a little bit. So as we continue on, try the second bit, this should create a little bit more sharpness if we use that same sort of blue paint. Okay, let's have a look. See? So you've still got this this furry kind of edge, but it doesn't sort of move around as much as there. Can you see? So it's more defined because the paper has started to dry off. Okay, so if you're thinking about painting some mountains that are a little bit closer, maybe you want a little bit more detail in them, this is a good time to go in. And it's very hard to actually explain the exact timing because it really depends. I mean, do you wait a minute? Do you wait 2 minutes? Depends on the temperature where you're located. You could be in a really hot location. This paper would be completely dry by now. It also depends on how much water you've used on the paper. If you used a lot of water, it might take longer to dry. So, yeah. But generally speaking, yeah, you know, if we keep that in mind, you know, even if we just wait, paint the first one, paint the second one, paint the third, and the fourth, you'll see a difference. It becomes sharper as we continue down. And this is very important. Vanessa's asking, I can't see how you're getting the paint picked up. Means the paint picked up. Yeah, so just on the side here. So basically, I am just just move that across a little bit. Yeah, I just go straight into the palette like that, with a little bit of water on the brush just to activate the paint. Okay, I'd say, you know, for these little washes here of the mountains, I'm using about 60 to 70% paint, okay, and only 30% water. So it's predominantly paint that I'm putting in here. Okay, here's the third one that we're going to do. Okay, and even more sharper shapes. Can you see that? It doesn't even matter what color I'm using. I'm just picking up whatever color I have on the palette. Okay, but can you see that? A little more sharper around the edges compared to that one. Now let's go to this fourth one. Okay, bit more color. And let's try this one. Check this out. It's pretty much almost completely dried around the edges here. There's a little bit of water left up there, so you can see it's a bit furry, starting to move off. But you can see the edges are sharp because the previous layer has dried. The water and background is dried. So why am I doing this? This is to show you how to create distant objects, how to create this softness, this sort of smoky, misty effect, which is very important when you're talking about atmospheric landscapes. We're pushing back the mountains, some of the trees, and for example, some of the mountains in the background, I might use this sort of technique here. And the trees, the closer trees, we might put in some thicker kind of paint, okay? And even on top of this paint, you can just, you know, drop in a bit of extra paint here as well. So like this on top of that previous layer, and kind of just layer in some shrubs and trees that are a bit closer. like that. Okay. So experiment, have a bit of fun with this. Okay, there's no set rule, but you know, things like even just tree branches like this, just have a play around and think and see what happens when I add in this paint. What does it do? Does it spread around at this particular time? Maybe I should wait till next time to wait a minute or two more, you might think to yourself. And that's how you kind of end up doing this all instinctually, knowing when to go in. Okay, because the timing is really important. If you don't get that right, you will struggle to convey what you want to in your painting. Okay, if you're trying to convey a tree, but you're doing it at this stage, everything's going to look very abstract. Everything's these lines are not going to hold. You know, in the beginning when we painted it, if we paint these tree trunks now, they look a little bit more like trees. Okay, sort of. Not really trying here, but like that. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Okay, I thought it was a nice little thing to get started with before we begin today. Okay, because I don't normally talk about wet and wet watercolor techniques. Sort of go through it while we're doing the scene. Okay, but a little exercise always helps. Alrighty, so I hope you guys have all got your sheet of paper ready, because we're gonna go ahead and get started. I don't see any other chats here, so I'm gonna just power my way through. We've got nearly 100 viewers, so if you're here, you're new to this workshop. Yeah, my name's Darren Yeo. I'm a watercolor artist here in Melbourne, Victoria. I run these workshops, try to run them a couple of times a month. They're completely free, and yeah, this is it's great fun for me. So yeah, if you have any questions during the workshop, just let me know in the chats. I'll get back to you. Lisa's asking, can this be watched later on replay? Yep, I'll have the replay up afterwards as well. But I do love having people here live. It keeps me kind of quite excited, and I love answering people's questions as well. Yeah, while I'm here, yeah, ask questions, bug me. You know, not being bugged. This is what I'm doing. So let's go ahead and start with the drawing. Now, another thing that I find interesting about this scene, well, not interesting, but I think we need to alter it a little bit. I want to add in a couple of figures, some people, maybe one at the front. We'll see how we go. But I've picked this one because it's fairly simple, but at the same time you've got nice shadows and yeah, a little bit of leeway to modify what's going on. Okay, let's get cracking. So what we want to do is we want to put in this line where the sky or the bottom of the mountains meets the earth, the ground. So where is that? If we look at the trees way back in the distance, you'll find that you just want to look at the entire scene. Where does it actually end? Okay, it's not halfway. Halfway is where the top of the trees are, kind of. It's a little bit further down. It's about a third, maybe a little bit more than a third of the way up the page. So about here, okay? This is super important to get right because everything else is going to be drawn in relation to this, okay? So there we are, all right? So I hope that made sense, okay? So now what we can do, put in some basic sort of shapes. All right. We'll firstly have this tree here, coming in from the side. Now the great thing about these landscapes, we don't have to be perfect. Yeah, we don't have to be perfect at all. That's why I like doing them, because you can change it around. Okay. I'm just putting in the general outline of these trees to remind myself where they are when we get in with the painting afterwards. Remember, we're not doing a full-on drawing. This is a blueprint, like a little plan for your painting. Okay, because if you don't have a plan, how do you know where you're gonna end up? How do you know where you're going? It's like anything, right? So there's a tree here in the front. Can you see that? Just kind of, I love this tree, the way that it just, there's grass and stuff underneath everywhere. You know, you've got this kind of larger trunk that reaches out. Where is it here? Goes up. Again, like I said, you can change this around. You don't have to make it exactly as per the reference. Okay. You've got these couple of branches that run up. Okay. Now this tree in the foreground is kind of important to imply with a bit more detail. Okay. And that's because it's closer to us. Like I was saying before, objects, subjects, and things like that closer to the viewer are going to appear more detailed. So we have to just imply that. Okay. Still quite loose, as you can see. You know, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on here. Most of this I'm going to leave for the brush. Just for the brush work later on. Okay. I like also, now it's very, very subtle, but you can see that there's a shadow coming across the scene here, right? A shadow. So I'm going to just imply this shadow like that, running to the left. Yeah. Okay. June's saying, having trouble hearing you. How's it now? Let me turn up the volume. Testing. I think. Oops. Maybe I should just talk closer into it. If I turn up the thing too high, it becomes distorted. Maybe pop your volume control up a little bit more on your computer. Okay, so this thingo here, just move this. Look at that. I'm just trying to indication of the shadow. Okay, don't make it too dark. Okay, normally I won't even do this myself, but this is just for your benefit. If you're new, especially, this really, really helps to kind of give you an indication of where the shadows are, to know and know where to preserve the light as well. You can see these little shrubs that kind of are caught in the light, and they kind of get in the way of the shadow. This looks really, really nice if you do it, if you use this in your scene. So here's more the shadow here coming across. And you know what I like as well are these little rocks that you can see. Just these little rocks that are in the scene here and there. These things here, these little rocks will create like a tiny shadows. Can you see that? Just little shadows running to the right. Even the shrubs here, some of these create some softer, darker shadows here. It's very tricky to see it, but very tricky. But more so, just take note of it. Don't try to draw all the shadows in and stuff like that, but take a mental note of where the shadows are. You can see there's little bits of darker shadows here. Okay. Let me just turn down I'm going to turn down the brightness of my light. I hope this looks a little bit better. Some people having trouble seeing. Kind of got another rock here. Okay, look at that. And like I said, you don't have to make them exactly as per the reference. Change them around a bit. Okay, look, this is where that shadow is cast, kind of from that right-hand side there, from the tree. Let me just put this trunk in a bit more like that. Okay, so there we have it. We've got this shadow running to the nice little shadow running to the left. Okay, another little tuft of grass there. That all these little, look at there's tire tracks here and footprints and stuff. Don't need to worry about that. We can apply that later. But these little rocks are more for me to remind myself, put some of these in because I think they just look really, really interesting afterwards. You've got these loose sort of scenes. You find that it does help. Even in the background, there's a bit of a darker shadow there. Okay. What else do we have in here? Well, we have these mountains. And if we look at where the mountains start, it's kind of around about here, just above this tree. Okay. I'm going to go in and let's roughly take this reference that just look, don't worry about the details of the mountains, just this little silhouette of the mountains. That's all I want you to focus on, okay? Because I'm really just going to get these mountains all in one go. There are a few different variations in values with these mountains, but yeah, we're not going to bother with them. We're just going to simplify this down, make it all into one larger shape there in the background, okay? And normally, I probably wouldn't do as much drawing with these mountains, but it's just to show you. So you've got the mountains, you've got, you've even got the trees here. Let me just put in a little indication of where the trees, the leaves come out from, like here, okay? Okay, see that? Just a little indication to know where it comes out there. Some of the branches, we've got the shadow. We've got an indication of the light. Now, I want to put a couple of figures, some people in here, just to make it look a touch more interesting. Where do you put the people? A good general rule, if you don't know where to start, is the rule of thirds. So you divide the paper into thirds here and here, and you want to put the subjects or the areas of interest where those lines sort of connect. So perhaps maybe here or here you can put some figures. I think here would be nicer. I'm just thinking, well, let's put a person here. Okay, it's a body. Oops, head there, like that. There's one leg coming out the front like this. Another one here. This is going to maybe help, so I can get maybe if I can get a shadow running towards the right hand side like that. Okay, let's say I put another person in like this. Okay, like that. Okay, of course I'm not explaining exactly how I'm doing it, but the heads you want to make a little bit smaller than the bodies. Okay, a couple of people. This could be maybe a couple of friends going for a walk. Okay, a couple of friends going for a nice little walk. It depends on what kind of story you want to tell. Teresa is asking, what kind of pencil will make light markings like that? Any kind of pencil, really. Just push down lighter. This is a mechanical pencil, and it does help. Mechanical pencils have a finer point, so it allows me to get in a plan, but not have too much lead pencil all over the place, if that makes sense. So look, there is a figure, person, couple of people. You might think it looks like this person could be just having a look at something over to the right. So I can try to emphasize maybe a hat or something. This person can be wearing like a little hat, looking over to the right hand side, like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty simple. I think we can go ahead and continue. I could put in more people here in the front as well. I'm just thinking whether I want to do that or not. Look, I'll just put in a figure here closer to the front, just for the sake of it. Okay, to show you just something different. Normally I wouldn't. That just standing around maybe like this. Okay, another person, shadow running to the right, and notice the head and the body of this figure larger than the ones at the back, and that's also a perspective thing. As you move towards the back of the scene, people become smaller, okay, because they're further off in the distance, which is why this tree is big and these trees in the back are smaller. So you just have to kind of gauge, figure it out, estimate. But I line up the heads, see how the heads are on the same point here. Okay, that implies a flat plane. And there it is saying maybe a cow in the distance. Yeah, cow in the distance, that works well. If you've got a photograph of one, you can go up and put draw one in as well. Large shadow is the large shadow coming in from the tree on the right. Yeah, so it's coming in from that tree to the right, but it looks like the shadow is also cast by another tree maybe to the right of that tree, because it's yeah, it's hard to say really, but it's quite a large tree, and there's also foliage on the right hand side of the tree, so it is casting a shadow to the right as well. Okay. How is the video going? Marion saying it's stopped. Can you let me know if the audio and video is working okay, everyone? Just let me know in the chats. Yeah. Looking at the stream, it seems to be okay. Okay. All right, cool. Thanks. I just had a mini heart attack. This has happened a few times with me, so phew. Thank God. All right. So let's get started the painting. Okay. Now we don't need perfection here. Just remember, this is just a plan. It's just a plan. Okay. Now let's start off by putting in the light of the scene. So step one, I always focus on the light. Think to myself, where's the light? Well, we've got the sky, which is pretty much the lightest part of the painting. The mountains, they're also pretty light, but the mountains are darker than the sky, if you see. But there's basically the ground, some of the tree leaves and stuff like that. So I'm just taking mental note of where the light is here. So let me just move the microphone a bit closer to my mouth. Maybe it's going to be a bit easier, Teresa. So also light on the left side of the trees. Well, not left side. Let me look. Yeah, this is interesting. Actually, that shadow. Who was? Someone asked about that shadow. The shadow is actually coming from the left. No, you're right. Yeah, because I thought it was coming from this tree, but it's not. Because if you look at the rocks, the shadow is actually cast on the right hand side. So some kind of tree, or I think it's some tree on the left hand side of the scene here, which is casting this larger shadow. That's a really good pickup. So it's so important as well. It's so important because that's where you figure where to put in the light source. So if you look at the trees here, the left side of the trees are slightly illuminated, which is why I was confused. I was thinking, well, how's that the case if this tree is casting a shadow to the left? So yeah. Anyway, really good pickup. And let's crack on. Now, what I want to do is put in some of the sky. So I've got some cerulean blue, okay? And it's really light cerulean blue, yeah? It's just 10% paint and the rest of it water. Really, really light. It has to look so light and very pale, and it looks almost out of place. But you don't need to worry because this has to be the lightest part of your painting. So bringing that down all the way into the edges of those mountains, okay? Okay, and look how quickly I'm doing this as well. You see some of the blue running through the trees here as well. So I can just go ahead and put in a bit here. It doesn't matter because the trees are going to be green anyway. So that some of this blue will eventually just mix in with a bit of the green. But you'll get maybe a little bit of the sky showing through. Okay, good. So remember to keep this wash in the sky very, very light. Okay, some people like to put in some clouds as well. You can go ahead and do that by picking up a bit of purple or some grayish paint, just dropping it a little bit in the sky. I'll show you how to do it. Bit of purple, maybe a bit of this darker color, like a grayish color, and I can just drop in maybe like a cloud here like this. Okay, this is what I was talking to you about before in terms of the wet and wet techniques when we did that little exercise before. Okay, this is a good time that you can just drop it in, okay, because it's going to spread, it's going to create a soft sort of shape, and it's not going to upset the composition. It's not going to look too sharp and annoying. Okay, so Remember to use darker paint, slightly darker paint as well, so that it comes out. Okay, so there are some little, here are some little clouds. I wasn't actually intending to put these in here, but doesn't matter. Okay, there are some clouds. Makes it look kind of interesting, make the sky look a bit interesting. Now, we'll move on to these mountains and things like that. I'm mixing in a bit of blue, a bit of ultramarine blue. And ultramarine blue is a darker sort of blue. It's, I'm also going to maybe mix in a bit of some purple here. A little bit of purple. Let's just try. Okay. These mountains, they are, look, they're kind of like, they're cooler sort of colored, but there is some green in them as well. But yeah, kind of some mixing a touch of green, greenish purple, whatever, here in the background. Okay. And note how I'm touching it with the sky a little bit in the edges of the sky to create a soft edge. Okay. Nice little soft edge. I want to have enough coolness, enough blue in there as well. Okay. Look at that. Just dropping that in. Dropping that in here, there, and letting it blend with the sky a little bit, but making sure these mountains are darker than the sky. Okay, a little bit more blue. It looks too purplish, like that. Okay, you can see they just all go all the way the back like that. Okay, these are the mountains. Okay, I'm trying to make them go a little bit further down, like here near the trees. Okay, where do they actually go? Kind of like around here, don't they? A little bit further down like that. Okay, good. And because we had planned and we'd put in the little edges of these trees here in the front, these shrubs, it becomes easier to cut around them a bit so we don't go down too far. Okay, good. So now, next step. Next step, we need to put in some yellows, some warmer colors. Okay, so looking all around the scene, I'm going to pick up a bit of, well, I've got myself some yellow ochre. Let's drop in a little bit here in the sky, where these tree branches are, and the leaves. Okay, a little bit here. Now this might look like an enormous mess to you, but don't worry. What we want to really do is make sure that we've got enough light here in the scene. Okay. Okay, so we've also got some light on the left side of these trees. Okay, there, here. You can even use a bit of quinacridone gold as well to get in a bit more of a really saturated golden color there if you want. Okay, this will mix a little bit with the sky. Don't worry, just let it do its thing. Okay, and you know what? You can even just paint all of these in just yellow, and we can actually add in darker green over the top. What I find very difficult is if you start off with the blues. Okay, I'm better at it now with some practice, but if you start off with the blues as a beginner, you tend to accidentally mix in greens if you're not careful. So yeah, let's just make this simple. Let's keep it simple. I'm just going to paint them all in this kind of yellowy color. Okay, and trust me, we will turn them green. We will turn them green. Just get that light in first. Super important. Okay, and the mixture of paint, like I'm saying, it's really just 10 to 20% paint of yellow paint. The rest of it's just water. Yeah, we want to keep it very light. And I'm cutting around these figures. Okay, look at that. Larger sort of wash here at the bottom. I do have this other color called buff titanium, which is a off-white color. I'll use some of that. You don't need it though. It's no big deal. Coming down here, as long as you just got a general yellow color, you are fine. Okay, and painting this light is so important to preserve it. Okay, there we are. So you can see this pretty much the whole painting is wet. like everywhere. There's just there's water. Okay. But this is where the magic comes in. And we can start playing around with some other wet and wet techniques. Okay. So I have myself a bunch of different brushes here. You don't need these brushes. I just use them because it makes it easy. I've got this little fan brush, okay, but you can just use a mop brush if you want, a synthetic brush like this. I'll use a few different ones to show you that it's possible using a variety of brushes, okay? So I've got some green. It's pre-mixed green. So if you don't have pre-mixed green, just use whatever green you got. Mix it up yourself with a bit of blue and yellow, okay? And look at that. I'm just going to drop in some green here, checking as well. Is it too dark? Looks okay. Looks all right. So I'm going to just feather that in like that. Okay, another bit there. Okay, here. Leaving some of that yellow showing through. Okay, but you notice some of this stuff is just so dark in the distance. I can afford to use a flat brush even. The flat brush is great for creating sharper sort of shapes, darker and sharper looking shapes. I mean, this tree is just so dark. This one here, look at that. Okay, and this might kind of, look at that. It's kind of coming into the shadow in the ground a little bit. Don't worry. More important that it just looks cohesive and everything looks joint. Okay, so this is me using a little another brush. I might use a bit of more yellow in the green here as well to just subdue the green down a little bit, like here, okay, like that. Bit more, like a little bit more darker green here, okay, like that. But we're preserving, as you can see, preserving a little bit of the light, the golden sort of yellowy color, okay, in those trees. But they do need to be darker. Do need to be a little bit darker. Whoops, I've gone over that figure. Doesn't matter. Just let it be. Just let it be. Yeah. The most important things to learn in watercolor is like, not, you can't control everything. It does what it wants to do, and you can only help facilitate, help kind of guide what's going to happen as you get better at these techniques. It becomes easier, but a lot of the time it does stuff I don't want it to do, but in the process it creates some really beautiful gradations and things that are just not really possible if I were to try to do it myself. Now this tree here, there is a bit of darker kind of greens and things. Let me just try to get in a bit of this green into this tree like that. I've got this mangled kind of brush. It's just an old, look at that. It's just an old brush. Okay. Flick that in there because this, I don't know, this is just going to create some darker sort of this foliage on the trees. Important. And the trees over in Australia, I don't know where where this scene is, but the trees over in Australia, they're actually not super green. Yeah, they're kind of like a subdued green, or even the kind of brownish looking at times. But yeah, look, just a little bit of this. Really, look, it's just to indicate that there are some leaves on this tree. Yeah. Okay. Further down, it becomes kind of like darker. You can start mixing some browns in here. Why not? Let's put in some browns. Okay. There. Good. Now I'm gonna just have a play around with the shadows now, since we're here. Shadows coming up into the trees. That kind of looks like a darker black. Oh, it's not even black, but it's like a grayish color here in the ground. I'm gonna mix in a bit of blue to it, blue and purple, to get myself in a, yeah, kind of like a bluish shadow perhaps. And I want to do this while the paint is still wet, by the way. Let's do this. Now, where is this? Kind of like a little shadow here, isn't it? Like here. Okay, and we're using a lot of paint, or thicker paint for this. dry off the brush, pick up the paint. So it's probably about 80% paint, 70 to 80% paint, the rest of it just water. This is for me to get in this indication of a shadow in the distance. Can you see that? It's very subtle, but there is a shadow there. Running from left to right. Okay. Using the flat brush for this. Look at that. Okay. Some kind of shadow back there. And it's going to be lighter than this shadow. Should be lighter than the shadow here in the front. All right. Same paint. Let's try this here. Maybe some more blue. A bit more blue. Like that. Might put the paper flat as well. And as you can see, because we're kind of playing around with this, these shrubs here before as well. I'm also remembering to leave the yellow in the center part there. See how there's like a little line, a little part of yellow in the center? Leave that. Otherwise the shadow will not make sense. Okay. Move that across, connect that shadow up with the tree. Okay. And this is what I'm saying with how it really makes your painting, you can paint things so much faster. And of course, it's not a race. It's not a race, but I think efficiency, something has to be said about efficiency and not laboring over something. And that was what I really bugged me when I was learning watercolors to begin with. I would just spend hours on something and it would look terrible even after all that time because I'd overworked it. So yeah, even here there's like little, it's hard to do it, but there's little branches. I'll get them in later. It's not dried yet. It's not properly dried, this area, but there are some darker bits under the tree. See, this is the advantage when you're using 100% cotton watercolor paper. All this stuff hasn't completely dried yet. Yeah, you still have an opportunity to go in, alter, change this around. I'm kind of looking around and seeing where are the darker bits of the tree, of the foliage. Can I further emphasize that? How can I do that? Okay, even the trees in the background. You might think to yourself, well, there are some parts which are actually a little darker. I'd want a bit darker. Can I go in there, a bit of black and a bit of green, and rejig that like this? We can. Okay, because the paint is still wet. Okay, I wouldn't recommend doing this too much though, because you can, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you go into it too much, you can stuff up that beautiful wash. Sometimes it's best to leave it almost unfinished. I know it doesn't make sense, but it almost looks better at times unfinished. Assuming that as opposed to overworking things, just cutting around this figure as well here to bring the light out of that figure. Okay, the extra darkness at the base of these trees does help to draw out these figures more, like that. See, a little bit of darkness there. Here, getting some sharper looking shapes. Now I'm gonna play around with this. I've got this little pocket knife here, just seeing. We can actually scratch out some little details. Might be too early. We'll have to wait a second. Yeah, we'll have to wait a moment until that background stuff starts to dry, but I'll show you what I mean later. I'm just scratching out some of the details. But here in the foreground, we have ourselves some additional shrubs and things like that. I'm going to try get in some little kind of shadows for these shrubs and things here. Doesn't have to be too detailed, just a little bit of color there. Okay, so nice like that. Some running through there as well. There, soft shadows. Okay, I want to put in maybe some little more indication of these shrubs darker, just a touch darker perhaps. There, maybe some bit brown in there as well. That. Okay, just some lighter shrubs. Changing, just varying it a little bit. That's too, I think that's too saturated. Just add in a bit more of this white here, here. Okay. Hopefully some of this will move into the shadow above as well. That. Oops. There. Over here, there's like a bit of, this bit of grass here as well. You're just making some little inconsistencies and feathering the brushwork, feathering the brush through helps at the end of the day to create the illusion of detail. Okay, there's all this layering. I'm looking at that shadow and I'm thinking it's not dark enough. I want a bit more in there. Let me just pick up a bit more paint here and drop some of this in, like that, like a purplish color. Okay, like that. If I can make this shadow darker, it'd be better so that it, yeah, there's more emphasis. Another thing you could do, you could create another shadow coming through the front. I'm just thinking whether I want to do that. Whether I want to add that shadow in or not. Another shadow. You don't have to do it. I'm very tempted though. Yeah. Maybe one coming across there. Like this. And another little connector like that. Don't need to do this. It's just I just wanted for a bit of an experiment to see if it might work. Because I felt that this area in the front looks a little bare. Okay, but you don't need to do it. Soft sort of shadow there, maybe some indications of some branches or whatever coming in from the left. Okay, so we are looking pretty decent for that first sort of wash. Okay, and as you can see, we've got this sort of atmospheric look with the background kind of all starting to get blurry, pushed back. Even the tree here, the softness of the shadows as well. And from here on, it's all just details, small details. Okay. Let me know how you're going as well. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. So let me just brighten this, turn up the brightness on my light so you can see what's going on in my scene. Do you have any questions so far? Let me know if you have any questions. And if not, I will probably just continue on and continue detailing. Okay, we should be able to finish this one off pretty soon. Okay, now let's put in some more details in the tree. The tree is actually darker. So, touch of brown, a touch of blue, ultramarine blue, and brown. And I'm going to work on this base of the tree here. It's about time we can go in here and get in the trunk of the tree without it spreading too much. And this is why I was kind of going through those techniques before with you all, right? It's kind of assumed knowledge that I'm just doing this and I have no idea what's going to work out. But the little bits of practice, these little exercises that I showed you before, really help. Because now I know is the right time to do these branches. Okay, and we're not going to, well, fingers crossed, we're not going to create a mess. Okay, see the branches now look sharp compared to before when we were painting the foliage. It was all, see, soft and that kind of thing. So this sharpness combined with the softness creates something very interesting. Okay, and both of them combined together. Like that. Okay, I'm just drawing with the brush. What I'm doing, just trying to drawing with the brush. Okay. Let's have a look. What else do we do? You know, I do have a smaller brush as well, like a rigger brush. Okay, just having a look. Just having a look at the scenes, the chat. Sorry. Okay. Seema says we'll appreciate it if you can speak a bit louder. Yep. Let me let me maybe just put my head closer to the microphone. Whenever I turn my head, I think yeah. Chelsea says, how do you fix a mistake? My tree to the left completely ran into my mountain, turning it green. That's okay, Chelsea. You're probably not going to get it right the first time round, especially with this wet and wet watercolor work. But you can also use a tissue. If you've got a tissue that will, just dab it on the paper and you can lift off some of the paint. That sometimes helps. Rate says, I missed the beginning. Will the video still stay up after? Yes, it will be up after. But do hang around till the end. I'd love to talk about my program that I have running. Marion says, hi, Darren. That looks so much nicer than the photo. Thanks. Thank you, Marion. It's coming together. Certainly coming together. Okay. So I'm going to keep it up. I'm going to keep going. And Margaret, looking like you're doing well. June as well. Fantastic. We're nearly there. Nearly there. Let's take our time with this part. Okay. Got a rigger brush. It's a longer brush like this. I know I only said you needed a few little brushes. I've got these ones, but they're not 100% necessary. You can just use a normal round brush. But the rigger brush just helps you to get in. Let me just grab a tissue. This is what I was talking about here, where sometimes the paint will spread a bit. So just dab like that. Fixed. Okay. A little rigger brush and a bit of black paint to get in. And maybe a bit of black and brown paint mixed together like this to get in some little, what do you call it? Branches or what have you here. Okay. Like that. So it's sort of little details. There's not much happening really. Okay. Something like that. And also it helps to then connect those branches up with some like darker leaves or something in here as well. I don't want it to look too isolated. It has to sort of join together with the leaves there. All these little brush strokes, you'd be surprised how they just sort of fit together and combine and create the illusion of detail. Okay. A bit more darkness off on the edge of the scene like that. Okay. Use my flat brush over here. This area in the back has started to dry. I'll start using this it's a little pocket knife that I have, and you can do this sort of thing to lift off and scratch off some details, okay, of the grass and stuff like that here in the distance, because you can see actually there's like little bits of, can you see just little bits of grass that's like coming up like that? So just scratch off a bit of that, and this helps to create some texture, some details, makes it look like there's something there. Okay, I love doing this. Through the field as well. See, you get these little bits of grass and things running through, tufts of grass that catch the light. And if you can do this, it just saves you from it saves you from having to put the detail in later with the gouache. Though with that said, I use white gouache quite often. Okay, there, just some of these bits of grass here. It's just another trick up your sleeve. Just another trick up your sleeve that you can use to bring back some light. Not only light, but the detail as well. Okay, it's like drawing, but yeah, using this scratching out technique. Okay, I tend to overdo it if I'm not careful, but that. Okay. Pretty subtle, but there's but it works. Okay. Let's have a look. What else can we do? Let's put in, I thought I might put in a bit more green here at the bottom. This is actually just, yeah, it's more greenish there. That just a bit more of this foliage. Maybe some, little bits of sharpness in areas as well can help. Okay. Where's that flat brush I was using before? Here it is. Okay. Some little colors for the figures as well, I think would be helpful. We're going to put in a bit of yellow there to the right of that figure, just so we get that in quickly. But we have, we've got some options. I don't think we really have many blues in here, so I thought maybe some lighter color. Like I've got some lavender color or a bit of cerulean blue that can that I can use for the shirt of this person. Let me just get a bit of that in. Okay, there. Yeah, just light wash that blue there. Okay. There. Good. So the body. How about these two here in the background? Well, you probably leave one of them white, even. But just a dirty sort of color, maybe just put that through like that. Okay. Let's have a look at this figure. Maybe a bit more of that blue. This one as well. Why not? Blue shirt or something. Okay. And the legs, I'm going to use some really dark color, just neutral tint, or you can just use black. Okay. And just bring the leg. Oops. A bit more water in there. Bring that leg down. Okay. That. Okay, connect it to the body a touch. I shouldn't have had that bit of white running through, but I'm just trying to really remove that a bit. There's a couple of legs. Okay. That figure in the foreground. And obviously like this one here as well in the back. Leg here. Leg here. That. Kind of just walking. Maybe walking towards the scene or walking away from the scene. That. Another person walking. like that. Pretty simple. I'm not putting too much detail into it. Also, the shadow on the ground is important, so I'm just going to pick up a bit of purple-ish color, purple kind of color, and join that up with the legs here. Bit of shadow to the. Oh, let me just figure the shadow's running in the right direction, like that. Okay, like that. Shadow here for this one. Here, here. Okay. One thing you'll find is that you'll get shadows that um, run through this other one as well, like some darker shadows, like of rocks and things. So, look, that's a bit of shadow for that rock, bit of shadow there. I'm actually going to bring out the light on top of these rocks a bit more later on, but a little bit of that shadow helps. Where else can we do it? You know, these little rocks that I was talking about before, this is why it's important to put them in sometimes to just give it a little bit more interest. And you know, even through here you see there's like darker little rocks and things as well, that show through. Might put in a bit of color for the head, a bit of red or something for the faces, just a warmer color like this. Okay, there we are. Let's have a look. Okay. Nancy's asking what's happening with the white above the distant trees. Yeah, look, I've just decided to leave it in. Sometimes I just like to have a bit of sparkle running through it, but you don't have to do that as well. You can just yeah, you can just completely let the green mix through. Screen seems out of focus. Sue says screen seems out of focus. It looks okay. Like you've just got to maybe refresh. Just check the bottom right hand corner of your video, and there's a little cog. It says settings. Change the quality to 720p. That will focus it, make it look better. Sometimes Facebook will change the quality of the video based on your internet connection. Okay, so yeah, look, we're pretty much done. I mean, this is quite a basic sort of scene. Okay, but we've used a variety of different techniques here, mostly wet and wet techniques. I will show you just a little finishing touch as well. I like to mix in a bit of white gouache with yellow for this part, a little white gouache and yellow. Um, and this will kind of just bring back some highlights on the scene. So, for example, this area here, this rock, I might want to just drop in a bit of yellow there, here, okay. There could be some little shrubs and things, some more yellow here, okay. You can just bring back a little bit of contrast, okay. But, even in the distance like that, you can sort of flick in a few bits of paint here and there. I'll actually dry this off first. like I said, just some quick finishing touches with some yellow mixed in with white gouache. I can bring out a little highlight on the head of this figure, kind of running to the left, on the shoulder, a little bit of highlight there. Okay, like that. Here as well. Here, like that. Little bits of grass. The trick is, yeah, just not to overdo the gouache. I just use a bit here and there, but not too much. Rocks as well. If I can just get myself in some of these rocks and things running through here. This maybe could be a bigger rock here. Just emphasize something like that. Here in the ground. That. Because it's quite kind of bare in places, I find this helps just to break up that detail a little. Some darker color to the right. You only need a little bit of shadow there to the right to indicate that there's like a rock there. See? A little bit of shadow to the right. Oops. Like a larger sort of clump of rocks here or something. Sometimes I tend to make them look all the same. I'm not careful. These ones are directly in sunlight. Make it a bit more lighter. Just emphasize the feet a bit better with this one. This figure here. Legs. Bit of hair or something on the figure as well, like that. Arms maybe, a bit of red there. Okay. They really just look like a bunch of people walking through, having a nice stroll, weekend stroll. Okay. And seems to be turning out quite okay. Let me know what you think. I hope you found this session helpful today. But do hang around, especially if you're new. I usually spend the last bit of this show talking about a special program that I have running. I've been running it for a while now, so I actually quite like this one. The rocks especially. I don't know why, but out of everything here, probably what I like the most are these rocks. And you can spend time doing them. And it's amazing it always amazes me how little detail you need to put in to emphasize something. And I'm just looking at it thinking, yeah, they do look like rocks. Yeah, a bit of shadow there. Okay. Of course, you can have just some darker ones, whatever. Okay, and after this as well, I'll probably go through and just finish detailing bits and pieces here and there. But as you see, I've changed up that reference a bit. It's very rare that you find a reference photo that looks perfect or that you like 100%. You often have to change things up, and even if I do like that reference picture a lot, I challenge myself and do things that kind of put me off guard at times, like the shadow at the front. I was thinking, I could take the safe route and just do what it look, painting whatever's in the reference. I could give that a try. And often you might stuff up a painting doing that, but you learn a lot through your mistakes. I'm struggling getting this bit off. Even the rocks, even these little rocks here in the front. I was thinking, is it gonna make it look funny? But I'm glad that I put them in because it adds some much needed detail, in my opinion. What is going on here? Here we go. There we go. So this is what we've ended up with today. I think it's a decent looking scene. I probably would have, I probably need to rework this tree a little bit, blend those branches in more, and detail some of those branches a touch later on. But it can work as it is already. Let me know what you think, and mainly let me know how you found this class today, how you found this session today, because I'm really, really appreciative of you all coming along and spending your time here, especially on the weekend, to sit through, learn, and it's no easy task to sit for 1.5 hours and paint something. So if you've made it through to the end, you've done an excellent job. So let me know how you went in the comments. If you know anyone as well that might be interested in watching this, share it with them. That really helps a lot in terms of getting my work out and sharing my videos with other people. So, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to run through a quick presentation. It's not going to take very long while I wait for some comments. And in this presentation, I'm just going to go through a 70-course program. It's a program that I've had running for quite some time now. I mentioned it at the start of the show. And let me just switch to it. Okay. So you should be able to see here on the right hand side, I've got a whole bunch of students already enrolled in this. So I've had this program running for I think a year and a half, about the last year and a half. Watercolor Essentials. It's got 70 courses, like I mentioned before, lots of different subjects. These are some that are included. Okay, as you can see, I've got some line and wash, I've got pure watercolor. Okay, and one of the things that I struggled with when I was learning watercolors is just trying to find tutorials that were full. So you end up going onto YouTube, and for me, I just try to find myself the easiest, shortest tutorial. Often they're sped up. The people don't go through exactly what they're doing and the proportion of paint, why they're doing something, even the planning stage. I think the planning stage of a painting is incredibly important. And if you don't have a good drawing and kind of analysis of the reference photo to see whether it's actually going to make a decent painting or not, you're often setting yourself up for failure. So another thing is understanding how to layer, creating depth and perspective. A lot of times with watercolors, it's just about layering and creating, building detail. As you saw in the show today, we've had basically, I was painting the light, painting all the dark. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. I hope you guys can hear me. Sorry, I've just double checking. Can you hear me okay? Okay, look, I'll just continue. I think there's been for some reason, I don't know why, but the audio is not so good. If I can bump up the audio a touch. Oops, hang on, just let me give it a second. Oops. Okay, this might be better now. Yeah, I think I just had it switched to another microphone. Okay, so look, I'll continue on. So yeah, this program focuses a lot on layering, creating depth and perspective. Um, and yeah, this is one of my paintings when I started really back in about 2013, 2014. And I was really struggling back then to understand how to layer, how to even plan a painting. This is something that I painted somewhat recently, about last year as well. And I use a certain process, as you can see here today. Painting the lights, painting the darks, the shadows, and also the planning stages as well. And if you use this process, it will dramatically improve your paintings because, yeah, you essentially have a plan. You know what stages you need to complete. And one of the big things as well, is being confident and relaxed when you paint. So, when you don't have a plan, when you don't know what you're doing at times, painting can be quite a laborious sort of thing, especially if you're painting for 2 to 3 hours, spinning your tires. So this, all my courses and this program helps you to become more confident, relaxed, because you have a process to follow. And of course, why do we paint? For me, it was being able to show my friends and family some beautiful paintings, feeling proud of myself, and just being able to create stuff that I was, yeah, I guess connected to. And a lot of the time we go to work, but we don't get to express that creative side of ourselves. So I'll just show you a few other things that are covered in this program as well. So, uh, a few things, like I mentioned before, painting with confidence, understanding perspective in drawing. So, perspective is, we've talked about aerial perspective or atmospheric perspective today. Um, in terms of normal, 1 point perspective, creating depth in your scene, that's something a lot of watercolorists and don't really talk about when you're watching their videos. And that's, I think, is a really important foundation with the drawing, because it's very difficult to create a convincing looking painting without an understanding of those fundamentals. So timing, again, what we were talking about today, but I go into it in a lot more detail. How to time your techniques to make sure you are able to paint something that matches what you see in your mind. Often you can end up with a painting that's just a complete mess if you go in at the wrong time. So, knowing when to do that. Brush techniques, water control, super important as well. So basically using wet techniques, how much water to use on the brush, how much paint, the consistency of water to paint, really important. Um, the tone as well. So things like value, making sure that you are using a wide variety of values, so light and dark values through your painting. Really, really important because it creates depth. Layering as well, so cover that. And colors, I think one of the most important things is just choosing a few important colors. You don't need 20 colors like I mentioned before. You only need a few to make your painting work. Okay. And of course, vision, which is something I kind of touched on in the beginning. What do you want out of your painting? Do you want to portray the scene exactly as per the reference, or do you want to change it up? Do you want to make it more exciting? So, again, this is what's included in this program. So it's a special program that I have running. It's 70 courses, like I mentioned. You get instant unlimited access and hundreds of hours of paint along demonstrations, also ads free live recorded workshops. You can learn at your own pace. So if you start off and something happens, you go to work and you do something, pause the video, come back to it, and you can even watch it at different speeds as well if you find I'm too quick sometimes. And it's narrated step by step in real time. So very similar to how I've run this one, but I'd say more detail. Okay, so these are some of the paintings that are included, and I'll just show you a few of them here. There's quite a few in this program, and I've only included some of the photographs here because otherwise I'll be talking for a long time. So you can see here more kind of atmospheric style landscapes. Got some line and wash stuff as well, Australian landscapes. I've got line and wash kind of buildings, different scenes, more vibrant sort of scenes as well. I used to paint with very vibrant colors. Now I've sort of subdued things down and use, yeah, a more realistic color palette. So that's another one that I did a while back. Also some portraiture scenes, portraiture tutorials as well, line and wash. Um, Here is some of my instructor ratings. So I teach on a few different platforms and I consistently get pretty good ratings. Okay, so I teach on Facebook, I teach on a bunch of other platforms. Okay, here are just some of my student testimonials that I have out there. So yeah, if you register today for my program and check the link in the description, that's where you can register for it. You'll get this first bonus, which is basically tailored feedback. And this is really important because when you first start painting, you're not sure what you're doing right, what you can improve on. So being able to contact someone and get real time feedback, I think that's really important. So you get to think a bit like me as well. And this will help you learn a lot faster rather than just spinning your wheels. And I think watching the videos as well, following them along, it's really going to help you to understand my process, what I'm doing, because I'm just explaining throughout the painting exactly what's going on in my mind, why I'm using a certain color, why am I putting this object here and not there, that kind of thing. So these little insights will save you a lot of time. Some of these little things took me years to figure out. Second bonus, you get access to a private group, and this is where you can ask questions. You get priority support as well. All right. But I do have a bunch of different groups on Facebook. There's the Watercolor Mentor group, which has about 3,000 to 4,000 members in it. There's a big one that has 200,000 members, but this is separate. It's just a private group because the others, I answer questions on them as well, but it just gets so busy at times. So students of this program can get access through that. Or you can email me or you can message me on Facebook as well. A third bonus, you get ads-free access to all previous live workshops. That's one in the past. Okay, this is over 50 workshops and I cover 1 to 2 different paintings per workshop. Okay, so of course, how much does it cost? So summary, you get 70 full courses, 2 months worth of student support, and you also get private group access. So normally with all the courses I have running in there, I set it at $497, but if you register today, this is the price. You get it for $297. So remember that 70 full courses, and normally when I sell these individual courses, they go from about $20 to $30 each. So you get quite a lot of value through there, and you definitely find something that you like. So if you're interested, just type interested or let me know more in the comments, and I'll send you the link. Just type enroll in the chat. If you have any questions as well, just let me know, and I'll get back to you while you guys are here. Okay, some more student testimonials as well over here from some of my previous students. Okay, but I'm gonna get back to the feed now. And there we go. Here's the painting again, and let me just have a look. Just have a look at how you are all doing, and fantastic. Great. So we've still got about 50 people watching. So you guys have done really well to make it through right to the end. I'm just going through, just having a look at the comments. How did you all go? Let's see. Jenny says, really enjoyed your lesson. You're an amazing artist. Thank you, Jenny. I'm glad you got some value out of today's show. Lisa says, great. Thanks, Lisa. And Vanessa as well. Fantastic. Anne, thank you, Anne. Vardaniga for coming along. Do me a favor as well. If you know anyone that's interested, share this with someone that that might be interested, the video is going to be up afterwards anyway, so I'll have that have this live video up. So yeah, do me a favor, share it with a friend. Really helps me out. Fiona as well. Um, let's have a look. Just have a look. Who else have we got? Perla says layering is the mystic track. Yes, and layering in a way that is natural as well. Um, and as you can see, a lot of the layering that we've done today is really wet on wet layering. And I really love the way these trees turn out the back. There's a sharpness of these branches here. I reckon I could have done those a little bit softer, and I can go through and change these up after anyway. But the softness of everything, it see how it just kind of it connects the background, the sky, the midground, and the foreground. It just connects on. There's no disjointedness throughout the entire thing, and that's what I find really beautiful when we're painting wet and wet. You can just create an entire scene that yeah, looks very cohesive. Linda says I need to pre-plan. Yes, so yeah, the even pre-planning, it doesn't necessarily mean just your drawing, but in your mind, just thinking, what do you want to kind of portray in the scene? Do you want to change anything up? Do you want to cut the scene and focus on a certain part of it? You know, those kind of things you really got to be thinking about before you start painting. Okay, but I did pick a pretty simple, more simpler reference photo today. But when you've got buildings, all kinds of things going on, you have to at times work on simplifying the details down. Let's have a look. I'm from Tech. Vanessa says I'm from Texas, and I love the way you say drawing. Drawing. Why is that? Okay. Um, I love that. You gotta love that Texas accent. That's like my favorite American accent. Um, watch all these. I really love watching those like old Western movies. And there's some like new ones, some new ones as well. I think Hell or High Water was not. It's not sort of new. Maybe the last 5 years I watched it. That was good fun. Jeannie says thanks for a great class. Thank you, Jeannie. Thanks for coming along. Sandy says thanks for a valuable demo. Thank you, Sandy. Um, Maya, hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you, Maya. And Ken as well. Thanks for coming along, Ken. This is first time seeing you here. Hope to see you along in the next workshop as well. I'm going to run another one in August. And I really want your feedback as well in terms of how I can improve, what type of subjects you'd like me to paint, or the subject you'd like me to paint in the next show. Because, of course, like I want to paint something that you guys want to paint as well. Marie says caught the last 10 minutes but learned a lot. Love the rocks. Yeah, they worked out well. And Vanessa says my picture looks terrible, but I learned a lot and we'll try again. I'm brand new. Yeah, look, wet and wet work is probably the most challenging technique to work out in watercolors because there's so many variables, and what you start painting can look completely different from how it dries. But with practice and with understanding of timing and mixture, using correct mixtures of paints, you can get a good level of control. Okay, so don't give up. Please keep going. Okay. What have we got here? I'm just going through the chats. Love the comments coming from you guys and the questions as well. Rel Jean says great lesson. Thank you, Rel. And Marion says had trouble with timing the water wetness. Yeah, and these little exercises are really going to help you out. That's why I thought I'd run through that before the session. Okay, these few little minutes, the few minute exercises there will kind of train your mind. It's kind of like driving, where you just know. I just know that the paper is dry enough. Hard to explain it. You sort of look at the sheen on the paper as well. The less of a shine that you get on the paper, the more dry it is. Things like that, and you start to pick this up. So keep it up, keep going. Rob, good to See you in the comments, Rob. Thanks, great explanations, and I still have a lot to learn. Yeah, and look, it's that's part of the fun, working towards it. And sometimes it's going to work out. Sometimes you're going to have a painting that you're frustrated with. I've got tons of paintings, even to today, that I really don't like. I paint something every now and then, and I just think it's terrible. But you have to push yourself. You have to step outside your comfort zone every now and then. And Jane says, thanks, Darren, as usual. Just great tutorial. Thanks again. Thank you, Jane. Um, Jenny says, don't change anything. It's gorgeous. Thanks, Jenny. Um, what I'm going to do is I'll just show you a little preview of what's included in my program. This is something that I normally run through as well, and hopefully the audio doesn't like stuff up like before. I forgot to set the right input before. That was what's going on. You think everything's I've done all the checks and everything. There's always something I get when I'm multitasking. I don't know just what happens, but I want to show you a little preview of what's included in my program. So just switch over. Okay, you should be able to hear me fine here. Um, so, this is probably better, this view here. So, this is what you get when you first sign in. You get a little introductory message here. These are all the different courses that you get included in this program. So you've got portraiture, you've got line and wash here down the side, and you've got all your watercolor tutorials down the side here. It's mostly just watercolor tutorials. So for example, I might want to go in, let's find something here, coastal watercolor landscapes. What have we got here? We've got, actually let's pick something else. Let's pick something newer that I've done. Maybe coastal Australian landscapes, there we go. We can pick something like tidal river. Yeah, this was one that I showed you before. I actually really like this. Scene. My internet's running a bit slow at the moment because I'm streaming at the same time. Okay, but yeah, you can open up the scene like that. Let me just pause the audio. Yeah, pretty much the same. And go through the drawing, and I go through all the steps that are required. This is a 30-minute. I think this is like a 38-minute painting. Didn't take me all that long. One of my favorites as well. Let me just skip through to the back, and you can see a bit more of the scene here. For some reason, the water there it was really kind of like orangey, greeny kind of colored on the day, using that scratching out technique. So yeah, you can go through. Got all these different, classes that you can go through and pick as well. I've got line and wash. What else do we have here? I've got other Australian landscapes. I've got this one here, walk in the forest. Let's go through. Let me just bring this up. So this is another kind of natural landscape scene. So yeah, all on demand. Go through it at your own time. Yeah, and you can, if you are interested, the link is in the description. Okay. So yeah, it's pretty much, you kind of, I think by the end of this session today, you know what my teaching style is like, and if you want a bit more, you can go and check it out. I've also got a Patreon where you can access these classes as well. Okay, so all the links are down in the description. Let me just switch. I'm going to switch back to the main display again. Just I want to give you a little bit of a preview. And let's head back. I'm going to head back to the chats. And Margaret says, I may have done my best yet today. That makes me so happy to hear, Margaret. I want to see I want to have a look at your painting. Can you upload it to our group? Or you can send it to me. Love to see what you came up with. And I'm just going to go through and just double check that there's the comments. Fantastic. So Jade says, thanks, Darren, as usual. Great tutorial. Thank you, Jane. Janie says, don't change anything. Yeah, I probably won't. The only thing I was thinking of changing is, yeah, maybe some of these branches, maybe a bit of darker bits in the trees. A bit darker bits in the trees. Ken says, my bad habit in painting is trying to be as realistic as possible in creating a painting, but this doesn't always happen. Um, how do you deal with this problem? Um, so you're saying my bad habit in painting is trying to be as realistic as possible. Okay, so I find that if you want to create a realistic looking, somewhat realistic looking painting, but still have that loose feeling and not have to spend all day doing it, use fewer brush strokes. So if you think about how many times when I was going into these trees in the background, they look like trees, don't they? Okay, but I wasn't in there for too long, was I? A lot of this was just painted wet into wet, and only a few brush strokes. I wasn't laboring away on that uh, one subject there. So of course you can spend more time and and create more detail. Okay, waiting for an area to completely dry, going over the top, layering. That's another style of watercolor painting. There are some amazing artists out there that can spend days. God, I forgot his name. Italian guy I follow, but what he does. A lot of professional artists. This is a secret. They do that. They actually use a projector and they trace their initial drawing, and then they go over in the watercolors because that will create a much more realistic blueprint that you can go over and essentially just color in with your watercolors. Have a look what else here. Susan says my paper Arches 140. Yep, kind of similar to what I'm using. Dried faster than yours, so I have very little of the soft blending. I learned that I have been trying to put way too much in too early. Thank you for the lesson. Yes, you kind of gotta wait for that. Wait for that sweet spot where paper is not completely dry, but there's still enough dampness in there so that you can create these soft transitions, but it doesn't bloom and cause a mess. And especially you might be in a hotter sort of area, Susan, or maybe you've got the air conditioning on or something like that really makes the paper dry out quicker. So it just means you have to be faster. But you'll find that kind of moment. But just practice on some scrap paper and you'll figure it out. Takes a bit of time, and when you change environments as well. I was on holidays in Singapore, I think a year or something ago, and paper was drying twice as quick. Jan says, thanks, this was so very helpful. Thank you, Jan. Um, let's have a look here. Val says, had a great time today. I'm happy with my painting. Thank you for the prep tutorial as well. Thank you, Val. I'm glad you enjoyed this little prep tutorial. I thought this was, important to highlight the difference between just the wetness of the paper and then the type of effects that you get. Okay, things just become more defined as you wait, obviously, and paper is almost completely dry here, except for this part, so that's bloomed out, but the rest, yep. Let's have a look. Denise says, thanks so much. Not able to paint with you, but we'll attempt it tomorrow. All good, Denise. Leave a comment later if you need some help. And Perla says, love those foreground little shadows. Yeah. I'm glad that I put this one in here at the bottom as well, actually. Thank you, Stacy. And Narada says, I'm very fairly pleased with mine today too. Thanks, Darren. Thank you, Narada. Did you do a line and wash today, or did you just go with the pure watercolor? It's always interesting that you mix it up and make something your own, which is impressive. Let's have a look. I think we're nearly at the end of this, guys. It's been a couple of hours. Been painting for a couple of hours. Well, not really. Probably an hour and a bit in total. Any final questions? Because if there's no more questions, I will probably end this stream in a bit. So I'll hang around for a little bit. But yeah, I think with this with this painting, I will just change a few things, maybe just add in a little bit more blending with the branches here as well. A little bit more darkness in some areas of the branches, but it's really not necessary. I like what was going on here with this darker one and these broken lines. And often when you're doing branches, I find that it's the best way is to just, especially when they're dark like this, is to pick up a bit of paint, dry off the brush, and then draw paint the branches in, because then you get these little areas that skip and they actually look a lot better. Okay. Well, you know what? I'm probably going to end this session. So, if you have any questions, you're watching along later, and you need some help, let me know. If you have questions about my program, happy to answer them too. If you're watching along after. Otherwise, I think the session ran pretty smoothly, and um I think, oh, Nancy sent some stars. Thank you, Nancy. Uh, thank you for that. So I will catch you all. Catch you all next time. See you, Pamela. See you, everyone.